Welcome back, guys. It's race takeaway time. Alright, so a couple of words before we get into my takeaways for this weekend's or last weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. So I do have to say, it was the race was definitely more interesting than I think a lot of people thought it would be. Most people probably thought it was going to be very boring and standard Spanish GP, where not much overtaking, whoever goes into turn one leading probably will win the race. And it did kind of look like that was going to happen until obviously certain events happened. But overall, I think that the race itself was definitely quite interesting. Was for sure not as boring as many believed it would be. I generally enjoyed watching it. It was generally fun to watch. At no point did I really get really bored, but I wasn't all too excited about most of it. But the race had its moments, so it definitely was not a boring race. Before we continue on to the video, if you like what you see in this video, hit the like button down below, and if you like what you see overall on this channel, then consider hitting the subscribe button. I know it goes without to say, but every single little like or subscription really helps out the channel, especially for a smaller one like mine. So yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's get on with the first takeaway. So my first takeaway is, kind of a two-part thing. Kind of a two-part thing. And it's that, for one, Perez needs to do better, right? Sergio Perez needs to do better. And I know, yes, he's new to the team. He needs his time to get adjusted, and it's only been 4 races out of what I think like a 23 race season or something. So yes, it's still relatively early on to the season, but he really has to get himself up there, right? Because it's all well and good, because a lot of people look at his performance like, well, he started in the pits and then he became 4th, or he started 8th this race and he became 5th, and it looks nice on paper, but in reality it's really not helping Red Bull. And honestly, him doing that, while it is good, is kind of like, he kind of looks like another Gasly or Albon in terms of how useful he is to the team. Because yes, individually he's driving pretty well. I mean, you're making up all those spots, he's doing well, but he's not doing well enough for Red Bull. And I fear that if this continues, and who knows, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but if this continues, then sure, the title fight between Hamilton and Verstappen is going to be interesting, but the constructor fight, right? I mean, I don't think that'll be very close, because look, a lot of people hate on ragging on Bottas and stuff, but he's always, look, sure, he's not going to be up in the front, fighting 1 and 2, maybe a couple of times per year, but in general he's not. But he's always at least like 3rd, right? He's always at least 3rd. He always gets himself up there, and he drives well enough to assist Mercedes and get him a big heap of points. But Perez, he has to get himself up in the mix a little bit. And this kind of leads into the second part of the takeaway, is that Perez being behind most of the time really hurts Red Bull and what kind of strategies they can pull off. Because essentially, all these races, it's been basically a gang up 2-on-1, Hamilton and Bottas versus Verstappen, and Verstappen is getting the short end of the stick, right? Sure, Verstappen, he's going out there, and he's fighting for the lead, and he's leading the races at times and stuff. But the pit stop strategy that Mercedes was able to pull was a large part down to the fact that they didn't really have to worry about Perez, right? They didn't have to worry about Perez. They knew they had Bottas that could, sure, he wasn't up there with the 2 most of the race, but he was always a looming threat that Red Bull had to take into consideration, while Mercedes really didn't have to take into consideration Perez at all, because Perez was, a couple spots behind everybody, and it was, he just has to do better. He just has to do better. And you know what? Sergio's a good driver, and they, arguably the Red Bull, they arguably have, the fastest cars. So he has to step up, because if he doesn't step up, then the Constructors' Championship is not going to even be close. But the Driver Championship may still be close, but he really needs to get up there and help, because Verstappen really needs him. You know, Verstappen, he's out, he's, you know, worldly when it comes to him. He's amazing, but there's only so much you can do 1 versus 2. So Perez, yeah, you know, he needs to step up. Now, my second takeaway is, you know, a bit of a short one, but, you know, I have a feeling that Bottas, he recognizes that he's on his last legs at Mercedes. I think Bottas, he, you know, he realizes it himself deep down that his chances of winning the World Championship is very slim. I mean, not only does he have to beat Hamilton, which in and of itself is a, you know, monumental task, but he also has to beat out Verstappen, which, you know, he's not looking very likely from him, and I think deep down he knows it. He knows that, and deep down he knows that, you know, his time at Mercedes is probably coming up, and it's probably going to come to an end pretty soon. And, you know, I feel like he, you know, I think he believes in himself, obviously, but I think really, really deep down, he kind of feels like he's out of it, because, you know, let's be realistic. I mean, nobody's talking about Bottas. You know, it's always been the 2-horse race this season, right? Through the first race, second race, third race, and fourth race. Nobody's talking that much about Bottas. So I think he kind of realizes his time at Mercedes is up. I think for him, he is just trying to get his frustration out, and he's just trying to, you know, do the best he can, because, you know, look, he's still a very capable F1 driver. I'm sure he can go to any team, he'll still do well, but he's coming up at the end of his Mercedes life cycle, and, you know, that little hold up where he was kind of holding up Hamilton was kind of like the first, you know, little inkling that's like, you know, he's like, Bottas is like, you know what, look, I've got nothing to lose. I probably am not going to be on this team next year, maybe, you know, again, look, I don't know, right? I don't know any of that, but it seems like, you know, Bottas is on his last legs at Mercedes, so he's like, you know what do I care at this point? You know, I got to do what I got to do to, you know, help myself. And I feel like he's a little distancing the team a little bit, and the team's distancing themselves away from him. But yeah, I kind of feel bad, because, you know, I want to root for Bottas, and I still will, but yeah, I think he's on his last legs at Mercedes, and he deep down knows he really doesn't really have a chance anymore. And so the last takeaway, my third takeaway, is, you know, the little FIA graphic where, you know, between Mercedes and FIA. I thought that was very interesting. A lot of people are talking about it, and it was pretty interesting, because I was just watching the race, and, you know, usually these team radios come up, and out of nowhere it popped up, and I was watching Sky Sports, and even they were like, oh, you know, Toto Wolff talking to, you know, at the FIA, and Michael Massey. So that was very cool. That was very interesting. And I've heard from other places that apparently this was in the works, you know, for like at least a year or something. So, you know, I really hope they add more of this into the race. And apparently it's not as, you know, doesn't happen as much as people think it does, but it's still interesting, right? To kind of get a little insight on what the teams are saying to the FIA, because, you know, you always hear, you know, the radios between a driver and their engineer, but you never have seen, you know, like what team principals or whatever are saying to the FIA, and saying like, you know, oh, he's doing this, or you know, that was not a legal overtake, or he ignored blue flags. I mean, that's just adds a little bit more drama, a little bit more dynamic to the race. And sometimes if the race has a little bit of a lull, seeing that coming up, you know, perks your interest a little bit. You're like, ooh, what are they talking about, right? So yeah, third takeaway, I like that graphic. I hope they keep doing it, and not only keep doing it, but do it more frequently, right? Maybe like 2-3 times a race or something, because it really brings an interesting dynamic to the races, which is always good. All right, guys, so that is what I have for you guys today. Those are my 3 biggest takeaways. I think the next race is going to be in Monaco, and I think that's in like 2 weeks or so. And Monaco is another one of those tracks, a very historic track, a very legendary track, but a track that doesn't lead to much action. You know, it's a track that where, you know, track position, how you qualify is very important, because once you're slotted in after maybe the first half of the lap, there's not going to be much overtaking left to do, because all the track is very narrow. It's very hard to just pass people. I mean, look, it's possible if people make mistakes, but in general there's not gonna be much overtaking, but should be enjoyable anyway, because history plays a big role in a lot of these things, and people want to see Monaco. And I want to see Monaco. I never watched Monaco live, so that'll be my first experience watching it live on TV. Obviously I won't be in Monaco, but yeah, that should be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how teams will adapt their strategies, how the midfield is going to play out, because that was very close. I wanted to talk about that, but I chose my 3 biggest takeaways, right? But the midfield is going to be interesting. Hamilton, Verstappen, of course, it's going to be interesting, and it should be a very fun, exciting Grand Prix in 2 weeks in Monaco. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.